We are standing in front of the old block building where basically we used to have our parts location for the case parts. Let me go back farther. My parents bought this property, I think, in 1953 or 54. Lived in the house next door and operated a gas station down at the north end of town. Then in 1957, they moved down here, moved the filling station operation here and started up as a DX station instead of Marathon.
Kenneth says, why don't we just go down to the other end of town where we lived? And there was a block building that was a garage. And he said, I think we can put in gas pumps down there because there was gas pumps at one time in front of the building. And he said, we'll just make a living down there. So we went down there and we had more than we could handle with business because he could weld, taught himself to weld. And he made beds for Indiana Oxygen and made several trailers, semi-trailers. We'd go to, I believe it was St. Louis, Missouri, and get the tandems. And he started building them, and then we had to build a building across the road. We had DX gas, Firestone tires sold, and we used to pump fluid in the tires at the tractor tires. We sold a lot of tractor tires. Well, after we was pretty busy with the semis, building semis for lots of grain haulers, Kenneth was getting tired. It was hard work.
And then he decided he was tired of squatting down welding all the time and inhaling all those fumes, so he looking for a new opportunity and signed up with the Case Company to become a case dealer.
And he says he'd seen this ad, but he never told me. And this guy come along, Bob Costin, started talking to Kenneth about it, and of course he had to tell me then what he'd done. He said he knew from the start that we would make it because the way we worked. So he came and talked to Kenneth, and we signed the contract at the kitchen table.
When do you recall starting to think, this could be bigger than just Wingate? This could be bigger than what it is now. Let's start thinking ahead.
Oh, it probably started in the 80s, actually. We were pretty much consumed with Wingate prior to that because that was the center of the universe as far as we were concerned. But when you had the downturn in the farm economy in the late 70s and through most of the 80s, you knew something had to change. Farmers were changing. Many were going out of business. Other farmers were absorbing their ground and taking on more acres. So as they got larger and there were fewer people to deal with, you could kind of see the handwriting on the wall that you had to go beyond the sphere of Wingate being the center of your universe. When Case was even on their own, they were pushing dealers to migrate towards the county seat because that would be the center of activity. That's where you go to the courthouse. That's where you bought your license plates and all those sorts of things. So in the early 90s, my dad and I had talked about it quite a bit up to that point, and he really started looking for a location that we could call Crawfordsville, just to kind of preserve ourselves.
I'd like to get your guys' perspective on the whole story of acquiring Lebanon and getting to know the folks there at the dealership and guys like Steve. I guess, where do we start, Dad, in terms of that?
Oh boy, I think I was visited by Gary Wright, and I can't recall the kid's name, but they called me up one evening. We had just opened the Crawfordsville store, and they met us down there, me and my dad, and said, look, Beardsley's wanting to get out or whatever, and would you guys be interested? They kind of started the talks. It was actually our third location. Bought it in February of 1997. and it's been one of our best producing locations since that day, honestly. Well, they had a good group of people. Gary, along with Gary Wright, there was Gary Dale and Steve, who, I mean, they pretty much spent their whole careers there. And, you can't do it. You can't go into a new place like that and just start from scratch. Or I guess you can, but it's far more difficult than already having boots on the ground of people that know the community and know the customer base and know how the store operates and who does what.
We've got people here that have been with us for, really our history with this location, and I think their loyalty and commitment to Bain Welker and the customer base is what makes this such a special location, and why it's been so successful for Bain Welker.
S&W here, Bob Schultz, they wanted to get out of business, and I was at that point one of their main customers, and I certainly didn't want to go green. So what can we do here, Bob Schultz, he said, go talk to these Bains, go see Phil Bain and Mother Bain. So we met, and a few hours later we decided, we can do this. I can be an investor. They've got operating experience, and Case IH would not let us jumping over, because we had the deal done. We had the deal done with Schultz and Weiss, and the Bains, and ready to move forward, and they would not let us join forces. The Bains had just expanded to 4 stores. They got enough on their plate, so that all right. And I was in it to it so deep already that there was no turning back. And there was Jim Robinson and Bob Miller. We had a bit of a relationship, and they kind of knew how I was wired. And you can do this without the Bains. So, all right. I grabbed another big customer. Carl Alt was his name, and we started in. Within, I'd say, 6 months, Gail Reese, from Plymouth, Indiana, said, "Hey, come buy me out too." And so we went to within 6 months, we went to see him. Steve Blackford, who you met, you were taping earlier. He was, Gail Reese's lieutenant there. He had been there for a couple of decades already. I think he was there since he was a young man as well. I don't think he had any other jobs. And we basically, forced him to be a financial partner. And in fact, Gail Reese even financed that. And away we went for 13 years.
So you were shut down in the 90s. What brought you guys back together in terms of?
Oh yeah, well his split from
we had another partner in the Remington store, and that wasn't working out well, so we had a difference of opinion there, and we basically split off. Norm had heard about it. He gave me a call, and we reconnected.
This time, Case was quite accommodating, much more accommodating.
They realized then that farmers aren't getting any smaller, and this probably makes sense from their standpoint, because they have one dealership, one dealer principal, so to speak, to deal with instead of
13.
I got to be honest with you, the entering into Ohio, I was kind of shocked. So I just remember my dad and Norm Welker came over here and met with Larry Roberts. Larry owned the Superstore, which was Wilmington's the base. That was kind of the hub, really. And then they had Georgetown as well to the south. And I didn't really think too much of it. I would support it if it happened. I didn't really think it would probably happen, to be honest with you. And lo and behold, it was like literally overnight. The papers got signed, and you're off to Ohio. And like I say, I brought Delbert and Jim over, and we were trying to assess the situation. So it was for me personally, I wasn't as prepared as maybe my dad and Norm were.
I'm not sure I was prepared either, to be honest about it. I was on vacation, and Norm called me and said something. Well, I signed the papers. I thought, oh crap!
You're in.
I wanted to talk one more time about this. You know?
Yeah.
And if you look at the map for you folks, for you guys, that
Yeah.
was a huge jump.
It was a big
halfway
jump.
across Indiana into
Yeah.
Ohio.
And in all honesty, I mean, looking back on it, once I got through, kind of myself personally got through the shock, when you meet the customer base over here, like we're talking with Mark, and you travel this part of Ohio, it's really very, very similar to West Central Indiana, to be quite honest with you. There are a lot of good customers in this part of Ohio, Central Ohio here, even as you get south toward our Georgetown store. So in all actuality, now that we've been over here for, I guess, 6 years now, it really lines up well and really fits the Bain Welker culture and mold.
There was really no succession plan as far as I'm getting older, he's getting older. How do you pass this on? And is there even interest and enough money to buy out what we think it might be worth? And the answer is no, there isn't. So the other choice is you go to some private equity firm, similar to what has happened in other areas, like in Ohio, for example, with some Deere dealerships. And that, to me, that is a major turnoff to most farmer-type customers, because they want to know that Norm Welker and Phil Bain care about their success in their business in this community, or whatever community we serve. And I'm not saying these equity firms don't have some of that, but when you're
But not much.
connected, no, you're not nearly
It's a
as-
financial maneuver.
It is,
Yeah.
and they could sell it tomorrow.
Yep, and likely would.
And double their money if they, so chose.
Yeah.
And now it's our employees' opportunity to expand upon that and make it even worth more for them.
If I relate it to, the newest stores that just came into the Bain Welker family, like Utica, Ohio, as an example, that little community is really very similar to the Wingate community that we've described here. I would like to think that the employees would have confidence and appreciation that, hey, this thing started from a small community with strong family roots, very similar to the communities that they live in, like I mentioned in Utica, Ohio as an example. And I think you could look at that at each one of the communities that our stores land in today, across both Indiana and Ohio. And I think there's probably similar stories. The communities are probably very similar to Wingate, Indiana. So I think that for me, if I was in their shoes, that would be a big takeaway for me, that this thing's really unique, and even though it's 15 locations and 300 and some employees, we really truly do value the family aspect of it, and are determined to keep as much of that in the business as is possible.